Hello physical fiends, it's Jordan here with another genre list. This time it's first person shooters. Perhaps not a genre one associates too much with the Nintendo Switch, and it's true, this is a smaller list than I'm used to. It's almost like a vacation compared to the JRPG, horror, and visual novel videos that I've worked on. But hey, they're a popular genre on other consoles for a reason. But today, it's the Nintendo Switch, and we're taking a look at the modest selection of FPSs available physically on the system. Now, for the record, I'm not including things like gallery shooters, light gun games, and some games that have first-person gameplay and may have gunplay of some kind, but maybe it's not the focus. Like many horror games could have a small section where you do shoot something, but that's not the focus, and you don't do it for the majority of the game time. Feel free to disagree in the comments below. If you appreciate the effort, leave a like and perhaps subscribe if you care about physical media. The bigger this channel is, the more publishers may see that physical games are worth the effort. Let's start with the daddy, the one that really made the genre take off like a rocket, Wolfenstein. Okay, Wolfenstein II, the new Colossus, doesn't look much like Wolfenstein 3D, but that's besides the point. The point is that this is an interesting release because originally the physical was one of those download required crap, meaning most of the game was not on the cartridge and your SD card was sweating. But sometime in the future, we don't know when, but limited run games are going to do a new physical release of this with all the game on the cartridge, which is nice, so look forward to that. Doom. There is a lot of Doom on the Switch, a lot of them physically too. Also, a lot of them not physically with downloads and stuff, so pay attention, fiends. Firstly, let's start with the simple Doom. And by Doom, I mean Doom 2016, obviously. The reboot, which released at retail and was one of the earliest FPSs on the system. It's a great game and very much what the franchise needed to have another lease of life. Very energetic and badass, and the Switch version runs surprisingly well. Doom Eternal was the sequel to that, and is even more of a miracle it came to the Switch, and even more of a miracle it got a physical release. This was done by Limited Run Games. Now the game is an absolute hog in terms of file size, but they did manage to squeeze all of the single player campaign and as much of the updates as they could onto the cartridge, but some updates and the DLC do need to be downloaded if you want to. And they ain't small. The game, some may say, is an improvement, others say it's a bit of a downgrade compared to the Doom 2016, but most will say it's fun regardless, as you blast demons with your big friendly giants. Doom 64 was also a limited run release, and this is a real welcome blast from the past. While we all agree that most Doom games are very fun, this one hits a bit different because it was previously locked to the Nintendo 64. Until this modern port. It's its own unique thing, and many consider it to be the real Doom 3, and I agree, and it's nice to see it physically on modern consoles once again. Usually only the other games got ported, but finally Doom 64 has its time. Doom The Classics Collection is going back in time even more, at least 66% of it. The physical release was by Limited Run, and this includes the classic Doom 1, 2, and 3, absolutely feature-packed. Now, originally Limited Run balls this release up since the release included DRM, requiring you to sign into a Bethesda account, something like that, pretty much annihilating the point of preserving the game for the future. But if you were on the ball and requested a new updated cartridge, you could get that one. So hopefully if you track down a copy now, you manage to get the good one. But I gotta be honest, it's a minefield out there. Forgive Me Father was only released physically in Europe for whatever reason, which is a shame because it's a pretty cool looking game, an FPS with Lovecraftian horror, and taking inspiration from the series just mentioned, it plays like a fast-paced 90s FPS with a nice comic book style. Many consider it to be a top-tier experience if you like these old school style ones. Has a couple of characters to play as too, and customization. As I said, it only released physically in Europe, but if you check the document linked below in the description and pinned comment, you'll see that I've got this game and every game in this list nicely organized for you. and purchase links to go alongside them, and any purchase that you make really does help support me. For example, there's Forgive Me Father that is available at Video Games Plus, a Canadian website who have free worldwide shipping on orders over 80 Canadian bucks, that's less than 60 American dollars. You'll find it and all the other games in that list, and I do greatly thank you for your support. Prodeus is regarded as highly, if not even more highly than Forgive Me Father. It's again another 90s inspired affair, and it looks absolutely fabulous, over the top, overly gory, fast-paced action that makes old school gamers salivate. Real feeling to the boomsticks with this one, and the level design is highly praised, which I think is a lost art in the modern era. For some reason, many developers forget to design interesting levels, or maybe they don't have the time, but the devs of Prodeus gave the attention it deserves. Sadly, the price has shot up on this one, especially for the North American physical. Void.
Bastards.
Wild.
Bastard.
What's that, Sean? A double bastard? Oh yes. Why, it must be the two Switch games, Void Bastards, and its sequel, Wild Bastards.
Bastard.
Alright, that's enough fellas, too many shandies. These are FPSs but also have tactical elements and roguelike progression. It's designed to be played over and over again with different characters, different builds. I think the sequel did let some people down. Most veterans of the first game found Wild to be a little bit of a step down, but who knows when it comes to the most hardcore of fans. They have strong opinions that not everyone agrees with. Ion Fury is a bit like Prodeus in the fact that it's considered one of the best homages to the golden age of FPSs. Thankfully, the price for this one is still affordable despite being done by limited run in North America. It also got a retail release in Europe. I know this game was embroiled in controversy at some point after release, which probably diverted attention away from the fact that it is a pretty awesome game, worth picking up for sure. Metroid Prime Remastered is not just one of the best FPS games on the system, it's one of the best games of its generation. One of the defining GameCube games that wowed audiences thanks to its production value, thanks to its incredible transitioning of Samus from 2D to 3D, keeping many of the abilities, many of the map sensibilities. And this remaster is well and truly above and beyond what was expected. They could have just ported it, but no, they really went the extra mile to make it the definitive experience, looking absolutely phenomenal on the Nintendo Switch. The Turok series. I've already talked about one of the best first-person shooters that was on the Nintendo 64, but some of the most iconic are in the Turok series, especially the first game, Dinosaur Hunter. Hell yes, I love the first game in the series, and I do enjoy the others, although I preferred it when it was mostly running around in a jungle with actual dinosaurs and stuff. But all three games were released individually in terms of physical releases by limited run games. I am just hoping for a sweet affordable triple pack from somewhere. Come on, some publisher out there, just do it. Let's stick with limited run and 3 releases. Crysis. All 3 games are somehow on the Switch. Bit of a miracle if you ask me, considering these games were memes before memes existed. Anyways, while the first game did get a retail release in Europe, the second and third game, alongside the first game, in North America were exclusive to limited run games. This time, I'm not hoping for a triple pack on one cartridge because that'd be too chunky for the money. Post Void is a game that was released physically on Switch by Super Rare Games, and while they may be hyperbolic about their rarity, the fact is, it's not exactly easy to purchase these days. This is what you get if you mix LSD with your 90s FPS. Incredibly cheap, digitally, quite short on the whole, but you'll die a lot and you'll want to replay it as well, so you get your value for your money. Well, not the 60 bucks the physical is demanding these days. Don't buy it for 60. Postal, Brain Damaged, has a similar fate, to be honest, an FPS from Super Rare Games, now going for 70 bucks on eBay. This one is even better though, an incredibly well-reviewed game, really leaning into the schlock the series is known for, but it's from different developers, and hey, they know how to make a great game. Crude humor, lots of excess, and fun, fast gameplay that could have been released a bit more accessibly, in my opinion. Nightmare Reaper, another one from Super Rare Games. They really did go through an edgelord teenager phase. This one looks a bit more Minecrafty than most, voxel blood, very nice, and the game is supposed to be excellent. I've not played it myself, but reviews seem very, very positive for this one. Project Warlock, again, same situation, but now we're getting even pricier. Is the Super Rare Games physical release worth $90 on eBay? No, but the game is really good. In fact, it's almost unbelievable that most of the 90s inspired fast-paced shooters are incredible. Like, it's almost like it's a winning formula. Although I do know, in about 3 years' time, there's going to be some developer prick thinking that deck building needs to be added, and then the entire industry is ruined. Tangents aside, this is a nice chunky game with 60 levels to take on and some Hammer horror vibes. I love it. The Persistence is not a 90s inspired shooter. Some of you will be very relieved to hear. Variety never hurt anyone, unless it's those variety chocolate tins and you have a nut allergy and spend Christmas and New Year's in hospital, then maybe variety can hurt. But this is a bit of a borderline as an FPS. It's a roguelike horror game where you kind of have a gun that you use throughout to harvest enemies. So yeah, it's something a bit different. If you want something scary and replayable, worth looking into. Severed Steel is a fast-paced, stylish shooter that's got voxels and bullet time. Watching the trailer makes it look like a total prefabricated BS, but yeah, I'm not sure anyone can really pull off these moves when they play, but the possibility's there if you've got the time to learn. Looks great, and I know bullet time is old hat these days. I think it's gone out of fashion a little bit, but it seems like it works a treat here, and I would like to see more bullet time back, thank you very much. Quake and Quake II. The Quake series are well loved for their fantasy settings and incredible fast-paced gameplay that gave birth to the boomer shooter in 3D. These two remastered editions by the legends at Night Dive, both physicals were done by Limited Run, individually of course. These include expansions, new and old, so plenty of content if you want to reminisce about the good times. Wrath, Aeon of Ruin was, for some reason, only released physically in Europe. Same publisher as Forgive Me Father, and this was touted as a great successor to the Quake series, or at least a commendable imitator. It's even powered by the same kind of tech. It looks the part, plays the part, dark fantasy. One of the most common complaints about it, however, is that levels are too long, which I don't know about you. I mean, it depends on the balance, but I like well thought out and intricate levels, not like 5-minute quickies. I miss level design. Rico and Rico London are two first-person shooters that the majority of the reaction to them has been, well, they tried. Both basic and ambitious at the same time, probably from a small team. They have mixed reviews overall and can't be wholeheartedly recommended, perhaps quite low on this list in terms of your priority, although both tend to be dirt cheap now for a physical, so if you find it cheap, maybe give it a shot. DUSK, however, is considered to be one of the best, and I've said that a lot, but I think if you asked 90s shooter fans their top 5, this would be in everyone's list, and many of them would put it in the top spot. At least when it comes to the modern attempts. It gets everything about the genre, what makes it tick, nailed down. If you had to choose one of these types of games, whether Wrath, Prodeus, Forgive Me Father, you'd probably want to choose this one. The physical for this one was done by Limited Run Games, only in North America, which is kinda sad. This needs to be in everyone's collection. Exophobia has a super retro look, going very excessive in that department, but this FPS also incorporates Metroidvania elements, which means it's equal to Metroid Prime, right? Okay, maybe not, but people do seem to enjoy this one. The excessive pixel art, fun combat, maybe slightly messy traversal and exploration, at least that's the feedback I've seen. The physical is found reasonably priced still. Killing Time Resurrected is getting a physical release from Limited Run Games. The pre-order window recently closed, so now it's time to play the waiting game on playing Killing Time. This is one of those actual retro FPSs that I didn't really have much knowledge of until this remaster. Absolute schlock, but in a really good way, with time being the key here. Supposedly very good, and Night Dive have done what they do best yet again with an above and beyond remaster. P.O.'d is another Night Dive special, another game I'd never heard of, from 1995. It seems these really were the fad back then. This one has you being a chef, escaping an alien world, because why not? Meat cleaver, frying pan, egg whisk, probably, I don't know. Again, this was done by Limited Run with pre-orders ending late last year. I'm sure the actual physical will materialize soon. This one isn't as well loved as the other games they've done, but it's probably quite nostalgic for some out there. Powerslave Exhumed. Man, Night Dive are just beast mode, one of the best devs on the planet right now, because this is one of their best works on one of the best games in the genre. Powerslave was a mid-90s shooter that had Metroidvania elements. It was basically Metroid Prime before Metroid Prime existed, and this remaster has the best of both worlds, from the PlayStation 1 and the Saturn edition. They had like different pros and cons. Well, they've apparently kept the pros from both of them and ejected the cons from both of them. I love the Egyptian theming on this one. XIII Remastered. Now this is how not to do a remaster. Night Dive were not employed on this one. Remaking a well-loved game and turning it into something completely wrong that was so bad they had to delete the first attempt when the reviews were absolutely eviscerating it. They deleted the game and they vowed to make things right, so they remade it for a second time, and yeah, it's still pretty crap. Something tells me the devs of this won't be making any more remasters anytime soon. I've never actually seen or tried the Switch version though, since it came out much later than the other versions. I do wonder what state that version is in. Answers on a postcard, please. Neon White was developed with the idea of speedrunning and parkour, ninjaing your way through a game with all the style of David Bowie. That part is my own theory. A hugely loved game that many people considered one of their games of the year when it originally came out in 2022. It's weird that you don't actually see the gun though, but having not played it myself, I can't complain. Maybe it makes sense as you're blasting your way through the environments more gracefully than Torval and Dean. Oh sorry, I have an American audience. More gracefully than Nancy Kerrigan. Zero Tolerance Collection. If we're gonna go super retro, we need to take a look at the Zero Tolerance Collection, which, while mostly being interesting due to historical purposes, Zero Tolerance was one of the first-person shooters developed specifically for a home console, and even more specifically, the Sega Mega Drive. This contains that, plus an expansion, plus a prototype of what was supposed to be the sequel. The physical was done by Strictly Limited Games in Europe. Nerf Legends is, according to some reviews, one of the worst games in the modern era. A 2 out of 10 from IGN, supposedly broken, pointless, you're better off using your money to purchase real Nerf guns. Now, this is a physical only game since the eShop version has been delisted. You cannot buy this digitally anymore and find out for yourself. You're gonna have to go the extra step to try this crap out. BPM, Bullets Per Minute, is marketed as a rhythm action FPS roguelike. You shoot, jump, and dodge in time with the beat, which sounds like something that I would be massively crap at and make me want to do terrible things to my Switch Joy-Cons. But reviews from those less irritable than myself seem to think it's pretty good. The physical was distributed by a limited run in North America and can still be found for a reasonable price. Star Wars Dark Forces Remaster is one of my favorite FPSs available on the Switch. This was Star Wars trying to get in on the Doom fad, but LucasArts, being the geniuses that they were back in the day, actually made it better. Better how? Well, they did this legendary thing of being able to look up, making dogs around the world very jealous. It's an incredible shooter with great level design, fun weapons, and it really immerses you into the Star Wars universe. Back in the day, it was probably one of the best Star Wars games available. Limited Run were the ones who published this physically, and it's recent enough that at the time of writing this and making this, you can grab copies of it from VGP with the links below. Rise of the Triad Ludicrous Edition is a remaster from Night Dive Studios as well, and this was a PC FPS. It never had a console release until this remaster, so completely out of my wheelhouse, and I'd never heard of it until Limited Run popped up with their physical release. Pre-orders for it opened late last year and haven't been produced up until now, but they'll come, and what you'll find is a simple early FPS, but this one has 5 characters who have different stats, and a fun thing about it is that enemies sometimes pretend to be dead or even beg for their life. Into the Dead 2 is probably going to be the worst game on this list. I mean, there's a fair bit of competition from Nerf Legends, but this reeks of crap. It's a cheap mobile game, somehow making it onto the Switch and somehow being deemed worthy of a physical release. It got negative reviews pretty much everywhere. Dying Light is a survival horror game that is far more worth your time than Into the Dead 2. There's crafting and stuff to go alongside the pew pew of zombies' heads being popped, and although the Switch ports, probably had some cuts, it's still one of the best examples of the genre available on the Switch. And since the original release in 2015, I think this has gained more and more appreciation. In terms of physical, some of the DLCs on the cartridge, but others require a download. Warhammer 40k Boltgun is an excellent FPS, especially if you're a fan of Warhammer 40k. Very crunchy, satisfying gameplay as you annihilate in the name of the Emperor. It's the kind of licensed tie-in a gamer dreams of. Sadly, the Nintendo Switch version is plagued with technical issues that, as far as I'm aware, have not been addressed via a patch, at least not completely. Although it seems to hit some people harder than others. Your mileage may vary with performance, but be sure to play it, maybe on a different platform if you have the chance. Metro Redux is a very chunky boy. It's 2 games in one, both on the cartridge, which is lovely. And it's a ridiculously cheap price right now as well. I don't know why. Not bad for a fat cartridge with 2 excellent FPSs. Literally some of the best available on the system. A bit of action, a bit of stealth, a dose of horror, and a good story to go along with it. Highly recommended purchase if you want a proper FPS experience. These are based off novels as well, which themselves are supposed to be pretty good. Now we go into some disappointing territory, since the following games, while good, do have some issues in terms of physical releases. And when I say issues, I mean you probably don't want to buy them. PayDay 2, let's start with the worst, okay? This game, as far as I'm aware, is completely dead. The servers switched off, you can't even purchase this on the eShop anymore. However, maybe you can play the game with bots. I'm not an expert on it, but even then, it's not the proper PayDay experience. You'll have to do your bank heists elsewhere. Borderlands Legendary Collection sounds like an instant win. 3 Borderlands games in one, that's more content than one can handle. And yeah, it would be amazing, but the sad news is that these looter shooters, it's not a complete cartridge. Borderlands 1 is on the cartridge, but Borderlands 2 and the pre-sequel have download codes included in the box. If you find it super cheap, it may be worth it for the first game on the cartridge, but definitely not a full price if you're a physical fiend such as myself. Borderlands 3 Ultimate Edition is even worse because there's only a few missions of the base game on the cartridge and the rest needs to be downloaded. For what it's worth, it's supposed to be a pretty good port of a pretty good game, and it's just a shame they didn't put the base game fully on the cartridge. The file size isn't that big really. It's mostly the DLC that's the space hog, but it is what it is. Bioshock The Collection is a fantastic collection of first-person shooters. Love everything about them. What I don't love is the physical release, because the physical release, all 3 games in this collection must have a download in order to be able to play them the whole way through. Each game only has 2 or 3 missions or levels on the cartridge until you are required to download an update to finish off the game. A real shame. S.T.A.L.K.E.R. Legends of the Zone Trilogy is getting a physical release in Japan with English, and it could have been one of the best, biggest and most important imports of all time for the Nintendo Switch, were it not for the fact that there is a monstrous download required. This isn't out at the time of making this, it's releasing in March, but from the info we have now, not only does the listing say 20 gigabytes of free space is needed, but also an internet connection is needed for that truly magical DRM experience. What a waste, especially since these 3 games could have fit onto a 32 gigabyte cartridge if the publisher was willing to pay for it. And there we have the FPSs, the first-person shooters, physically on Nintendo Switch. Did I miss any? Is there any controversial selections? Let me know in the comments below. If you want to purchase any of them, please check the links down below as well. There's a document there with the entire list, and purchasing via my links is the best way to support this channel. And of course, subscribe. The bigger this channel is, the more publishers will pay attention to physical releases. Maybe we'll get less bullshit codes in a box or download required nonsense. Subscribe. Check out some of my other stuff. I got a lot of lists like this that I'm sure you will enjoy. Take care.